Shalom to my brothers and sisters who are in the body of Yahuwshua HaMashiyach, who is the Messiah, and shalom to the scattered Hebrew Israelites who are throughout the four corners of the earth. Today, I bring to you a very exciting word. And the title of this word is Israelites, the reasons why Yahuwah has no buying and selling on the seventh day, the Sabbath, part 3. I want to say this again. Israelites, the reason why Yahuwah has no buying and selling on the seventh day, the Sabbath, part 3. Now, the reason why this is titled to the Israelites, because again, it pertains to the curse that Yahuwah has placed upon the nation of Israel. And the curse can be found in Hosea chapter 2. For he was tired of my ancestors' ways, for they was into idolatry and into fornication. In other words, they was cheating on the Most High. So he put away his holy days and feast days from us, for he was tired of us being hypocrites and cheating on him. Here you see a picture of a Roman stick calendar. And in this video, we will briefly talk about that because it does pertain to the reasons why Yahuwah has no buying and selling on the seventh day. So let us begin. For those who are not aware of this, Yahuwah has spoken last year through his messengers. He has a message directly only to the Hebrew Israelites, and for the second message is directed to everyone, Israelites and Gentiles. Please make sure you share those messages. Also, make sure that any Levites that you know today, make sure they receive this video. The title of the video is The Holy Days and Feasts, Judgment Against the Levites. Make sure they hear this video. For many are not aware of the judgment that's set against them that would carry over into the new eternal kingdom. Now for the opening scriptures. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 12. Keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it, as Yahuwah thy El have commanded thee. So as you meditate on these scriptures, I want you to ask yourself, what does holy and sanctify mean? Take this time to write that question down in those scriptures and meditate on it. Okay? Now, this is very important for you to know thy enemy. And the enemy that I'm talking about are the enemies of Yahuwah and Yahushua. You see, my brothers and sisters, we are not dealing with just with flesh and blood. We are also dealing with spirits and principalities. And we are living in a world that has been fed great lies. You see, Satan has deceived the whole world, as written in Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. And he was clever as a snake. And in this video, it would give you an example on how clever Satan is. Also check in the video description box for the links to part 1 and part 2 of the 7-day Sabbath confirmed. Because from learning about the 7th day, from learning about the 7th day, it led to the understanding of why there is no buying and selling on the Sabbath day. So this video, which is part 3, will be added to Yahuwah calendar playlist because it goes along with part 1 and part 2 that pertains to the Sabbath day confirmed. Also in the video description box, you will have access to the charts and photos that are listed in these videos from part 1 to part 3. And you will see it under Google document and the link will be provided there for you to click on. So let us begin. Now for the updates, some reminders and things that was not mentioned in part 1 and part 2. And the reason why this must be done first, because it's going to give you a greater understanding why we have no buying and selling on this 7th day, the Sabbath of Yahuwah. Now, this is a small chart here to give you a brief outline of what happened from the ancient Roman calendar to the Julian calendar and to the Gregorian calendar that we're using today. For you are already aware that the ancient Roman calendar was started in 753 BC, which originally had 10 months, and Saturn was its first day of the week. Then in 700 BC, they added two more months to give them 12 months. And this calendar followed a 8-day week cycle, with Saturn being the first day, and they was going by the moon. Then when they transitioned to the Julian calendar, he started this calendar in 45 BC, but it wasn't completed until March 4 AD by Augustus. During this period, you would have an 8-day week cycle and a 7-day week cycle. Okay, so you would see in ancient historical facts evidence of both of these types of weekly cycles from 1 AD to up to 500 AD. Now, in the time of Constantine, by 321 AD, in his time, majority of them was using a 7-day week. Majority of them was using a 7-day week. Okay, so what Constantine did, he reformed the Julian calendar and made Sunday the first day of the week, and he also started the persecution of those who was using Yahuwah's calendar. Okay, so to sum that part up, under the Julian calendar, they also followed the 8-day week, and then later on they slowly start transitioning to a 7-day week, with Saturn being the first day, and they was following the sun. Okay, as far as dealing with their months and years. Then when Constantine came on the scene, he also made other changes to the Julian calendar, such as making Sunday the first day. Now, when we transition to the Gregorian calendar in 1582, Pope Gregory realized there was a lot of errors in the Julius calendar, for it was out of season. Therefore, he made some changes, and they took away 10 days. Okay, and when you read further in history, you will learn that other countries, when they adopted the Gregorian calendar, they too had to drop days too as well. So you will see a range from 10 to 13 days. Now, the total number of years that it took for this calendar to be used worldwide was more than 300 years. So under the Gregorian calendar, they used a 7-day week cycle, and Sunday was their first day, and they used the sun to establish their year. I also forgot to mention that under the Julian calendar, even during this time, you would see ancient historical records of them using the moon during this period, because what was happening, the gospel of Yahushua was spreading like wildfire, and because it was spreading, they was learning the ways of the Israelites. In other words, they were learning the ways of Yahuwah and about his calendar, as far as to keep up with the holy days and holy feast days. Okay, as well as they was influenced by other nations when they was establishing their empire. Okay, so as you can see, when you begin to study the history of these calendars, you will learn that history repeats itself. For example, the ancient Israelites have forgotten the ways of Yahuwah, such as his laws, statutes, judgment, commandments, while living in ancient Egypt. And the same is happening now in our time. Read the book of Jubilees. So what I'm saying to you, because we are in Babylon and Egypt, we too have forgotten the ways of the Most High. And you know our history. Most of it was due to it being taken away from us. Okay. And because we have forgotten these ways, we have taken on the heathen's ways. And you can see that evident now of what my nation is doing. So now Yahuwah has sent his messengers to awaken us up and telling us to repent and to return back to him and to keep the covenant that he established with us during the time of our ancestors and during the time of the Messiah, for a new covenant was established. Now, one of the things that was not mentioned in part 1 and part 2 was giving you an example of multiple of sevens on the calendar. So here is October 1582, and you can see here 10 days were omitted. So what I mean is with multiple of 7, I'm going to take you to November 1582 because this calendar would be very hard to show you an example of that. Okay? So you can understand what effect the 10 days had on the Gregorian calendar for those who was using it to establish their 7th day. So here is November 1582. Multiples of 7, Yahuwah's sacred number. The heathens' misunderstanding of the 7th day, but the multiples of 7 can be seen in their calendars. Why? Hint, you can find it in the Encyclopedia Britannica. And for those who watch part 1 and part 2, you know what I'm talking about. So in the heathens' calendar, they did use the format of multiples of 7. For example, in November 1582, on Monday, day 1 was number 1. Okay, on Monday. And when you look below day 1, you will see that each number is increased by 7. For example, when you add 7 to 1, you get what? 8. When you add 7 to 8, you get what? 15. And when you add 7 to 15, you get 22. And when you add 7 to 22, you get 9. And you will see the same format that occurs throughout this whole calendar until you reach the end of it. For example, under Tuesday, you have the number 2. Add 7 to 2, you get 9. Add 7 to 9, you get 16. Add 7 to 16, you get 23. Add 7 to 23, you get 30. Now, when you get to the Wednesday column, you will see when you add 7 to these numbers, you'll get from 3 to 10 to 17 to 24. And then there's a blank here because then a new month will be established. So below 24, you will have 1. Now, I am aware that 24 to 1 is not a multiple of 7. But when you have put two calendars together, you will see that when this block is labeled number 1, the pattern will repeat again. It'll go from 1 to 8 to 15 to 22 to 29. Okay? So now this brings us to this question. So why was the Romans week called the 8-day non-denial cycle or the 8-day week? So why was it called that, my brothers and sisters? The reason why, because they do inclusive counting. In other words, they counted from Saturn to Saturn's day, which gave them 9 days. For they labeled their weekdays with letters from A to the letter H. And when you count from A to H, you get a total of 8 days, as you can see here. From A to B to C to D to E to F to G to H, give us 8. Now, because they do inclusive counting, such as counting from A to A, this is why they got 9. And when you break 9 down, what they were doing was they was adding 8 to 1. Okay? So this is still how you get the 8-day week. They was adding 8 to the prior number. And that's how they got 9 days. Also, they established the market day on the 9th day. And on the 9th day, that day was dedicated to Saturn. That was their god, okay? So again, when they count from A to A, you got what, 9 days. So the market day was on the letter A, and the next market day would be on the letter A. That's how they establish it. And as you write this out on their calendar format, you will learn that these letters rotate, and because these letters rotate, you will have a different letter to represent the market day for each month, because a year is not perfectly divided by 8. For the year, it's not perfectly divided by an 8-day week. Okay? So what is the planetary order the Romans were following to establish their week? So we learned that Saturn was the first day, which led to Venus being the seventh day. Remember the Encyclopedia Britannica, which is very important, because there it tells you that how they established this was that within a day, what they did, they looked within the day, and in the 24 hours of day 1 of the week, wherever a planet appeared first became the first day of the week, which was Saturn. And also on that same day, in that 24 hours, Saturn appeared in the first hour, the 8th hour, the 15th hour, and the 22nd hour in a 24-hour day period on the first day of the week. Now notice that these numbers are in multiple of 7. So when we're doing inclusive counting, we get 8. This probably explains why they established the 8-day cycle, the 8-day week cycle, okay? Because here you see if we add 1 plus 7 equals 8, that's how they got the 8-day cycle, okay? So when you count from Saturn to Saturn, you get 8 days. So if you take the number 8 and add it to 1, if you take the number 7 and add to 1, you get 8, right? And then if you follow that same format, for the 8th hour, you add 7, you get the 15th hour. And when you add 7 to the 15th hour, you get the 22nd hours. So this FYI, you will also see this same method again when studying Yahuwah calendar. I just want to give you a little hint. Take this time now to pause your screen to understand inclusive counting and why the Romans established an 8-day week in the beginning. Okay? Which brings us to this. Because of inclusive counting, and by dedicating a 9th day, the market day, to Saturn, and by the sun or moon total days of their year being not evenly divisible by an 8-day week, will cause the 7 planets to rotate with each non-denial letter, the market day. And to understand what I'm saying, here's a chart. Here's an example of a continuous 8-day week. In the column to the left, we have non-numbers, planets versus the week based on seven planets. So I'm comparing a continuous 8-day week versus a 7-day week cycle. Okay. So for the Romans, how they label their weekdays is with these letters from the letter A to the letter H, will give us a total of 8 days. Okay. And because it was a continuous 8-day week cycle, you will see for each week, the planets will rotate. For the first week, we have Saturn, Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and ending with Saturn. But for the second week, it would start with the Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, and ending with the Sun. And for the third week, we would have the Moon, the Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, Sun, and ending with the Moon. So as you can see that these planets will rotate on a continuous 8-day week. But when you compare on a 7-day week cycle, these planets will not rotate and they will be fixed. Because in a 7-day week cycle, the Romans would label their weekdays with the letter A, ending with the letter G. And the first day would be Saturn, the second, the Sun, the third, the Moon, the fourth, the Mars, the fifth, Mercury, the sixth, Jupiter, and the 7th day would be Venus. So it would be fixed, it won't be rotating. Okay, take this time now to pause the screen to review this chart. So here's a question for you to meditate on, to write down. According to the word of Yahuwah, is Saturn the planet or light in the heavens to tell us Yahuwah's seventh day, the Sabbath day? So are we to use Saturn to establish Yahuwah's seventh day? Something to think about. Now we're going to an example of an 8-day Nundinal cycle calendar. Okay? So take this time to pause your screen to look at this photo. This is a replica of the Fasti Antiates Majors. Take this time now to pause the screen to look at that. And again, remember, in the Google document, you will have access to these photos and as well as to the resource link. Now, here's a better photo where you can see what that replica was saying to you, okay? In the top row, you see these letters in red. I'm sorry. In the top row, in your left-hand side, you will see the non-dial letters listed from A to H, okay? So in the top corner here, you see the letter A to let you know it was the market day. And this same pattern is continued for each month. At the bottom of the Roman calendar, you have the list of the number days, okay? So you have 31 days. Then you have, so that is 28 days, and then so forth in Roman numerals. Take this time now to pause the screen, okay, to review this calendar format. Now, again, in the upper hand corner, like I was explaining to you, the letter A is your Nundet day. That was telling when your market day is. Then the next letter would tell you what period of time you are in the month, such as Khalids. Then the next word would give you the name of the month, and IAN is January. And the last letter would give you the day letter. Now, the day letter is talking about something else. And it's what it's doing is letting you know what type of day it is, whether it's a feast day. So the day letters can be F, N, or NP. Do not get this confused with the 7-day week letters. Remember, the 7-day week letters go from A to G. So the calendar above, was showing a reconstruction of the Fasti Antiates. And this calendar was the only known pre-Julian calendar that exists, which was dated from the 60s BC, and it was found at the site of Nero's villa in Antinum. Okay, so this to give you an idea of what the Roman calendar looked like before the Julian calendar was officially established. Okay. Take this time now to pause your screen to look at the resources. But the site of this information, where it came from, was the FourAngelPublication.com, as well as other sites. So this will be listed in the video description box for the website where the information came from. And for the other websites, you may see it on the Google document to access there as well. Now, for other photos of the Roman calendars, you can these links will also be provided either in the video description box or on the on the Google document. And please excuse my tone. Sorry about that. Now, is Yahuwah's seventh day based on Saturn? We know the planet Saturn represents Satan, and we'll talk more about that to give you proof. Remember Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 19 through 20. So do you think Saturn will be used to identify the seventh day? If so, why? Provide the evidence with the word for the confirmation. Okay, so that's another question for you to think about. All right, so take this time now to pause the screen to write that down. So in the first century AD, which is 1 to 100 AD, the 7-day cycle began displacing the 8-day week cycle. You will find in other sources that the Romans were influenced by other nations that led them using a 7-day week cycle. Also, both of these cycles coexisted for a while, even in the early 1st to late 5th centuries, which was from 1 to 500 AD. However, what day or what planet was the first day in their 7-day week cycle? Now, evidence to prove that Saturn was the first day in their 7-day week cycle can be found in the Roman stick calendar, which was found in the ruins of the Bath of Titus. Now, the Bath of Titus was built in 81 AD, and Titus reigned from 79 to 81 AD. He was the son of Vespasian, and forgive me for mispronouncing it, and he was the one who besieged Jerusalem in 70 AD. Okay, so now let's take a look of this Roman stick calendar. And I want to blow this up just a little bit so you can really see what this calendar looks like. Okay, here you see them listing their gods from left to right. Okay, so from left to right, the days of the week before Constantine, it was Saturn was the first day, the sun was the second, the moon, Mars was the fourth, Mercury was the fifth, and Jupiter was the sixth. Now notice that Saturn is represented usually by an old man with a sickle, and we'll talk more about that. But these was the gods of the Romans. Okay, remember, the heathens will worship and follow the heavens and the hosts of the heavens. Again, read Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 19 to 20. Okay, so now you begin to understand why they name their days of the weeks after the planets in the heavens. Okay, take this time now to pause your screen to review these photos, but now we're about to go further down to explain them. Now, in the center, you will notice here the 12 zodiac sign. Okay, now when you learn about the 12 zodiac sign in the Hebrew, it is called Mazzaroth. That's a mystery about that. Now, Mazzaroth is mentioned in the King James 1611 Bible, as well as the hidden books such as First and Second Enoch. Okay, it's very important to read that. All right, and then on the left and right side of this calendar, you notice that it numbered the days of the month, starting from number 1 ending to day 30. Now I know you're scratching your head and probably asking why would they end with day 30? Well, we'll talk more about that further down. But the most important thing I want you to pay attention, remember, this thick calendar was probably dated sometime around 81 AD, which is very important, which will explain why you see 30 days. Okay? Now we're going to read this note that pertains to the 7-day calendar. This was done by Four Angels Publications, and the title of the PDF note was the Planetary Week in the 1st century AD. When you have some time, I highly recommend that you read this whole PDF note. It's some great information there, which gives you resources. Okay, so bear with me while we just quote word for word. On the words of the Roman baths of Titus have been found the astronomical public calendar, which envisioned this, the use of the planetary week more thoroughly. So this first line here is already confirming what we read in the Encyclopedia Britannica. Let us continue to read. In a square frame, there appears in the upper row the 7 planets, one beside the other. Saturn, which was damaged, Sol, which is the sun, Luna, which is the moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, which was damaged, and Venus. Beneath them are the 12 signs of the zodiac in a circle, beginning with the characters. Aries, represented by Ram, Taurus, the bull, Gemini, the twins, Cancer, the crab, Leo, the lion, Virgo, the virgin, Libra, the balance, Scorpius, the scorpion, Sagittarius, the archer, Capricornus, the goat, Aquarius, the water carrier, Pisces, the fifth. Besides these, there appear to the right the days 1 to 15, and to the left the days 16 to 30. Besides each weekday, monthly constellation, and day of the month is a whole, in which a small knob was found by the transposition of these knobs. The months, the days of the months, the days of the month, and days of the week were indicated. So this is why it was called a stick counter, because they had holes beside the days of the week from Saturn to Venus. They also had holes besides the days of the month from the 1st to the 15th. And they also have holes beside the 12 zodiac sign. And they use a stick to indicate what time they were in. And you can see an example of that in this color photo here. Okay. As we go further down this video, you will get the resource for the color video. Well, when you go to 4angelpublication.com, here you will see that this site will provide you the resources of where they get this information. I highly recommend that when you have time that you read these links in the video description box that the 4angelpublication.com writes that pertains to the 7-day week. Also, they did a great article that pertained to the history of a lie that was given to us through the Roman Empire. Please make time to read those 2 articles. You'll be amazed. Now, what I did for you, I established a timeline events so we can get a greater understanding about these Roman calendars, so we can see what actually took place. So the first timeline event I have listed for you is Augusta completing the Julian calendar in 4 AD. Now, this information came from Wikipedia in the footnotes. Okay, take this time now to read this footnote, but to save time, I want to go to the next timeline event. So now we have the understanding that the Julian calendar was completed in 4 AD. Okay, by Augustus. Okay. Also, the next event we have is the Messiah crucifixion resurrection in 32 AD. And it's very important that we know this, because now it's going to give us more understanding about the changes to the Roman calendars. Okay. Also, to make you aware that the Messiah, Yahuwshua HaMashiyach, was born in 3 BC, which is in the month Tishri, the 7th month of Yahuwah's calendar. So the Messiah lived for a total of 33 and a half years. Okay. Now he preached the gospel of Yahuwah for 3.5 years when you do your studies. And there's videos on the channels to confirm to you what I'm telling you. Okay. Now, the reason why it's so important to understand when the Messiah was crucified and resurrected, because it gives us the date of when the gospel went forth, which is very important. Now, I know when you read the Gentile writings, they will use different words, but I want to make this clear. The true name of the faith was pertaining to the Nazarene. So let me read this for you now. The Nazarene faith, which is the gospel of Yahushua, is the correct faith, the New Testament, that spread it into Rome before Constantine got a hold of it. In Hebrew, you will be known as Mashiach Nazarene, which we translated in English, Messianic Nazarene. Read Acts chapter 24, verse 5, chapter 28, verse 22, and Daniel chapter 9, verse 25 for the proof. Now, the Nazarenes were the sect known throughout the old world and Rome. And Paul was known as the ringleader of the Nazarene. Okay? Depending on the source, the word Christianity may be used due to the influence of the Roman Empire, but that was an incorrect term given to the masses. For when you do a further study about Christianity and the true meaning of that word, you will learn that Christianity is actually a faith of idolatry when you do a further study. So what I did for you, my brothers and sisters, I put together this chart so you can have to prove to you what I'm saying. And this chart is about the words that was inserted by the heathens in the King James 611 Bible. Remember Revelation 12 and 9. Okay? So here I'm going to give you a few words, an example to prove to you that these words were inserted by the heathens. Now, the Hebrew word for Passover is Pashak or Pashak. It's made, there's different spellings for it. So in Old English, you'll see it written as this, okay, where you see my cursor at. And in modern English, you will see Passover written with a V. However, the heathen inserted this word Easter, and Easter only appeared one time in the Bible. So this is how we know that they inserted this word. They mess with the word. They mess with the Most High Bible. Okay. Now the next word for proof is the word Jew. Now the word Jew didn't come about until the 18th century, which was in the 1700s. So the Hebrew word is Yahudim, and in the Old English it would be written with the letter I as Iudaean. And in modern English today, we would say Judean. Okay? Again, this is how we know that the heathens have been tampering with Yahuwah's Bible. Another word they inserted was Jesus, or known as Jesus. They inserted this word. The Hebrew word is Yahushua, and when this word was translated into Old English, you get Iosha. Ioshua. Okay? And when it's translated into modern English, you would get Joshua. And evidence of this can be found in Acts chapter 7, verse 45, in Hebrews chapter 4 verse 8, and Numbers chapter 13. Okay? And to prove to you what I'm saying, I went ahead and brought up the Strong Concordance for the correct pronunciation of Jesus, which is G2424.
Strong's G 2424. Jesus. Jesus.
And when you look under the King James translates Strong G2424 in the following manner, you will find that the name Joshua in the New Testament was replaced with the word Jesus. Okay? Again, Exodus, I believe, is chapter 23. You will find that the Most High do not want us to call upon other gods' names. He's very particular. But because Satan has given the whole world lies and caused the masses to call upon the name Jesus, this is why many has been deceived. So Yahuwah has winked at your ignorance, okay, my brothers and sisters. Acts chapter 17, verse 29, and also Ben Sirah talked about this as well. So Yahuwah winked at your ignorance. This is why he established the new covenant for you, for you are now under mercy and grace. But now take this time to seek the Father for his truth. Come out of these lies now. Come into Yahuwah's truth. And my brothers and sisters, have patience for those who continue to use these heathen pagan names, for they too was given lies. See, the whole world been deceived. Have patience with them as Yahuwah has patience with us. Remember, we all have been guilty of calling upon these heathen pagan names. Also, the word God, the lowercase God, means ruler, chief, prince, judge, and so forth. Also, the word Christ was inserted in the Bible. When you look in the Greek, it's actually pronounced as Christos. This is why you would see the heathens using the letter X during Christmas, or using the letter X when spelling Christ, because Christ is actually the false anointed one. It is actually their sun god. This is the anti-last Messiah. And proof of this, and proof of this can be found in John chapter 1, verse 41, and Daniel chapter 9, verse 25, because the correct word should have been used, Messiah. For in the Hebrew, it is called Mashiach. In the Old English, it was called Messiah. And in the modern English, it was also called Messiah. So take this time now to pause your screen. Also, there'll be videos listed for you to watch to get more understanding about these words. And remember, we are called Messianic Nazarene, or Messianic believers. And our faith is dealing with the new covenant, for we are in covenant with Yahuwah through Yahushua. We are not in a religion, my people. Remember, we are in a covenant with Yahuwah through Yahushua. So take this time now to pause your screen, and remember, you will have access to this chart in the Google documents, as well as the resources will be listed there too. So by knowing etymology, which is the chart of love that we just went over, we define what the true meaning of the Romans, quote unquote, Christianity is. Remember Daniel chapter 9, Daniel chapter 7, verse 23 through 25. Now we're going to look at the next event in this timeline. According to Dio Cassius, in 44 AD, some of the market days was changed. And remember, market days was known as non-denial, non-decol days, okay? And the market days indicates the usage of an 8-day week. So when you see the letters the letter A to H in the Roman calendar, you would learn that it's the 8-day week. Okay, when you see the letters from A to H. All right. Now, one thing I didn't emphasize in the last two videos is this. When we look at the last line, it said here, in any case, the 8-day non-denied cycle began to be displaced by the 7-day week in the first century. So in the first century, which is 1 to 100 AD, that was the period of time when people were slowly transitioning to a 7-day week cycle. I'm talking about with the Romans, okay? Next, you see a comma, and dominical letters began to appear alongside non-denial letters in the fasting. Now, here you want to pay attention to this, because you would find that the domino letters didn't come later, okay? And as we go further in this video, you'll see why. Again, the hint is etymology. Look at the word. Now, and also, I was trying to find evidence of this to prove, if this statement is correct. And so far, I cannot find any evidence of their calendars having dominical letters beside the non-dial letters, okay? But as we go further in this video, you will understand what I'm talking about. So now the question you want to ask, when did the dominical letters appear? All right. And that answer will be given below, okay? The next event we will look at is the Roman stick calendar. Again, the Baths of Titus was not built until 81 AD, so probably the Roman stick calendar that was found there was probably dated around 81 AD, which is very important, and you'll see why. Because in the first century, when we had from 1 to 100 AD, the 8-day non-donate cycle calendar start being replaced or displaced with a 7-day week cycle. So you need to ask yourself, why was this happening, okay, in this first century from 1 to 100 AD? Well, the first reason is that the Roman Empire was influenced by other nations to convert from an 8-day week to a 7-day week. Think about it. As they was conquering other nations and putting them under their rule, they was coming into those other nations' knowledge. All right. Again, the angelpublication.com site or this resource will be listed. Okay, because it gives you a great breakdown of this. Also, during this period of time, the gospel of Yahuwshua HaMashiyach, the Messiah, was spreading like wildfire since 32 AD. So now you can see how the Romans was being influenced by the Israelite ways and cultures. In other words, this is how they came to the understanding that they should not have an 8-day week, they should have a 7-day week. Okay, let us continue. Now, the next thing that was going on through the first century AD, you had myth, myth, excuse my tongue, Mithraism to come about, started in the first century and ended in the fourth century, which is 1 AD to 400 AD. Now, Mithraism is a popular religion in Rome. It was very popular during that period of time. And the cult of Mithra, which is actually a sun cult, was competing with the gospel of Yahushua. And this cult exalted the sun and made the Sunday more sacred than the rest of the days, for it became their holy day or holiday. Okay. So here, as we can see, that the cult of Mithra didn't exalt the day of Saturn. They exalted the day of the sun. Very important to know. However, in the Julian calendar, Sunday was not appointed the first day of the week. Okay? Very important to know. Again, forangelpublication.com will give you the proof of what I'm telling you. Now, when you look in the Wikipedia .org site, you will come to find out that Mithraism was also known as Mithratic Mysteries. It was a mystery religion. In other words, it had a lot of secrecy pertaining to it. And this religion centered around the god Mithras, okay, which was practiced in the Roman Empire from the 1st to the 4th century AD. So you got from 1 to 400 AD. Very important to know. When you get some time, read that, because then you begin to understand how the heathens begin to Hellenize the gospel of Yahushua. Another important thing that I came to learn about this so-called religion, which is called Mithraism. When you read about ritual and worship, you will come to find out in their temples of Mithras, that their prayers was addressed to the sun 3 times a day, and Sunday was especially sacred. And this was quoted from that site. So again, they made the day of the sun sacred unto them. It became their holy day. It became their holiday. And they made their prayers addressed to the sun 3 times a day. Now, what they was doing is different from what the Israelites do. And the difference between them and the Israelite is the Israelites praise towards the east. Okay. And when the Israelite prays towards the east, it's dealing with Jerusalem. Now, as far as the sun only rises directly in the east 2 times a year. Okay. A lot of people don't know this. The sun only rises directly in the east 2 times a year. But the rest of the year, the sun only rises southeast or northeast. When you get a chance, my brothers and sisters, take some time and go out and observe the heavens and look at the position of the sun in the sky during the during the morning, the noon, and the evening. Take a look at the sun. Look at how the sun rises and how the sun sets in its position throughout the year. Okay, so therefore, when you study about Mithraism, you will learn it's about sun worship. Excuse me, it is about sun worship. Excuse my tongue. So in the Roman Empire, there was transitioning from Saturn to the sun worship. However, both go hand in hand. Read the resources to see how they relate. So read those resources given in the video description box to see how the sun and Saturn relates. Okay. Also, you have to remember too that the code of Mithras was competing against with the gospel of Yahuwshua HaMashiyach. Very important to understand what is going on here. Okay. Also, however, even in that particular time, the 7-day week and the 8-day non-denied cycle still coexist for a while in the Roman Empire. And the source for that will also be provided. Take this time now to pause the screen because one of the sources that would prove this is Wikipedia as well as for angelpublications.com. So now this brings us to the next event in the timeline. When did the Dominatical letters appear? It appeared in 321 AD. Remember when I was telling you about the word etymology? Okay, so here's the answer. Dominatical letters are 7 letters that go from A to G. And they came after the introduction of Christianity, which is really the gospel of Yahushua. Okay. In 321 AD by Constantine, the 7-day week cycle was already being used by the Romans. Remember, the Romans was influenced by other nations, including the Israelites. So their 7-day week cycle, first day was Saturn. Keep that in mind. Very important. Now, when we look at etymology and we look at the Latin word Dominica for Sunday, you will learn that it means the Lord's Day. In other words, Baal's Day. Okay. Also, when you look at etymology for this word, Dominical, you will learn that it comes from Domini or Dominica, which stands for Sunday. And the reason why etymology is so important, because now that we know Dominical letters means Sunday being the first day of week, this confirms that the Domino letters came later after the gospel of Yahuswha HaMashiyach, okay, that these Dominical letters started in 321 AD. From 21 AD up to now, this is how you got the Dominical letters in the Roman calendars, okay? So the order of the planets now in the Dominical letters are, the first one would be the Sun for A, the Moon for D, Mars for C, Mercury D, Jupiter E, Venus F, and Saturn G, okay? And the source can be found in the under Wikipedia, which will be listed. So now we're going to review this order so you can understand what this timeline event, so you can see what was truly going on here. Number 1, the 8-day week, which is known as the non-denial market day. First day of that week was Saturn, and that 8-day week cycle was started in 753 BC. Now the 7-day week started in the first century, okay, which is 1 AD and up, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, the 7-day week started in the first century, and evidence to prove this is the stick calendar. And on the stick calendar, Saturn still remained the first day of the week, which was 81 AD. Also, other nations and the gospel of Yahushua, which brought forth also, excuse my tone, also nations and the gospel of Yahushua, which brought forth the influence of the Israelites. Let me read this correctly. Also, during this period of time when the 7-day week was being established, you will learn that it was because of the influence from the other nations and from the gospel of Yahuwshua HaMashiyach, because now the Romans was learning about Yahuwah ways. Okay. Also, during the same period of time, you have this religion called Mithraism, which was about sun worship. They was competing with this gospel of Yahushua. Okay. Now they didn't honor Saturn, they honored the sun. But on the Roman calendars, you would see Saturn still being the first day. All right. Now the Dominical letters, which is Sunday, started in 321 AD. So it's very important that you see this format so you can understand the difference between the 8-day week, the 7-day week, and the Dominical letters. 8-day week still has Saturn's first day. 7-day week still has Saturn as first day. And the Dominical letter week has Sunday as its first day. Okay? So this is why I say that when you learn about Christianity, you will learn that it's really about sun worshipers. Okay? For Christianity is not the true name of the gospel of Yahushua. All right? Now, sun worshipers also cover other pagan religion. Okay? And under this sun worshippers, the Roman Empire, which is known as the fourth beast in Daniel chapter 7, verse 23 to 25, inserted and changed the meaning of certain words. This is why the masses use these words out of ignorance. They did not know, for they was taught lies. Okay? Now, this is something I learned interesting about Constantine. Now, you definitely want to get your pencil and paper because we're about to go real deep about Constantine, things that you may not be aware of. Most of y'all hear the most common things, but because of angelpublication.com, they gave some very interesting facts that many do not know. Now, Constantine the Great worshipped the sun, and he served this god named Apollo, and Apollo represents the sun. And during his time of reign, you had the gospel of Yahushua going forth, which are you having the Messianic Nazarene believers since 32 AD, and this gospel was was competing against the Mithraistic believers. Okay, so you have two different types of faiths competing. Now I'm gonna let you know right now, the gospel of Yahushua was spreading like wildfire. So you know the Roman Emperor Constantine had to do something to get this under control. Okay, and we'll talk more about that. So by the time the 7-day week was officially adopted by Constantine in 321 AD, the lunar cycle had fallen out of use, and he replaced the first day of the week with Sunday. Now, I want to read this quote because this, again, it'll back up what I'm telling you about the 8-day cycle coexisting with the 7-day cycle, for it comes from Wikipedia under Nundinate. For it says on their site that different scholars have placed the end of the 8-day markets at various dates from the late 1st to the early 5th centuries, which is 1 AD to 500 AD. Okay, so that's the proof that the 8-day week still coexists with the 7-day week. Okay, so you may see some relics of that. All right, even during the time of Constantine and after. Also, I want to point out to you on wikipedia.org that pertains to Dominical letter that it says here that these letters didn't come out to after the introduction of Christianity. Now we know what it's talking about. It's talking about after the introduction of the gospel of Yahuwshua HaMashiyach. So you would see the letters A-G was added alongside, again commencing with January the 1st, and the Dominical letter marked Sunday. So after the gospel of Yahushua was spreading like wildfire and was established throughout the Roman Empire, Constantine developed the Dominical letters after the pattern of the 8-day and 7-day cycle, after their pattern. That's where it comes from. And the Dominical letters started on January the 1st. Now, those who study the history of the Roman calendars, it was taboo for them to start the first day, or to actually start the market day on January the 1st. That was taboo for them. So this is another proof to you, to show you that the Dominical letter didn't start until 321 AD. All right, and Dominical letter was indicating Sunday. That's the hint on that. All right, want to make you aware. Also, FYI, the original Julian calendar started from March to February, and that was before Constantine got a hold of Julian calendar. Okay, take this time now to pause your screen to read the other information listed below. But now we're going to the next question. So why did Constantine do this? Was it faith or political? And does it fulfill Daniel 7, chapter 7, verse 23 to 25? And does it cause buying and selling on the seventh day? Something to really think about. And also for FYI, Constantine reigned from 306 to 337 AD. And for those who read the Encyclopedia Britannica from part 1 and part 2, it's important that you know that Theodosius' reign was from 379 to 395 AD. Now we get into the real juicy part about Constantine. And my brothers and sisters, you definitely want to write this down. And this comes from angelpublication.com. This link will be provided in the video description box. I highly recommend that you make time to read that article that pertains to the history of lies. Your mouth can drop and read it from beginning to end. Do not run with it. I'm telling you, read it from beginning to end to see the whole picture. Okay? Now, Constantine's decision for Sunday was political. A lot of people don't realize this. Okay? And his decision was based upon to unite his empire to attain greater power. And there you would have the coming of state and church together. Now, this started during the time of Constantine. For on that site, and I read this quote, it states that Constantine's Sunday law was civil legislation enacted to unite his empire via a single calendar. And there was a reason for this. And as we read further down, you will come to find out why. On the website, the title of this section is Constantine, the Consummate Politician. And under there it says, Constantine was foremost a politician and a military strategist. That means he was very smart, cunning. Okay? He issued at least 6 degrees. He issued at least 6 decrees relating to Sunday observance, but all were for purely political reasons. These decrees were, and I read all of this as quote. And I just want to read just a couple, because these couples that I want to read first to you is the highlights. Now, this is what he said of his decrees. March the 7th, 321 AD. A law commanding townspeople, courts, and trades to cease from labor on the day of the sun. So, on the day of the sun, which is Sunday, they are not to work. Also, Sunday declare a market day throughout the entire year. Now, this one I highlight in red because I want you to see. Now, do you understand why the 8-day and the 7-day week is different from the Dominical letters that was used in 321? For now, Sunday would indicate the market day throughout the rest of the year. Okay? A decree supporting the Council of Nicaea, decision that Christ's resurrection should henceforth be observed on the day of the sun, Easter Sunday, rather than commemorating the death of Christ on the actual crucifixion, Passover day of Nisan, albeit 14th. Do you see this, my brothers and sisters? He issued a law that Easter should be observed on the day of the sun, okay? And that the Messianic believers should no longer honor the death of the Messiah and his crucifixion on the Passover day of Nisan, which is known as Abib 14. Now, you really want to pause the screen and read this. This is very important. And even on the Angel Publication site, they give you the resources to show you where they're getting this information from. But let us continue. So as we can see, the Roman Sunday law was most fitting for worshippers of Hercules, Apollo, Mithras, and even quote unquote Christians, Gentiles Hellenizing the gospel. It was inclusive, everyone on one accord in a paganistic heathen way. One word, Babylon. Do you see? Now, Constantine was seen as a servant of God by the Christians and as the supreme pontiff by the pagans and heathens. Do you see how he was satisfying both faiths? Okay. Do you see the deception here? But let us continue to read. Now, here's the second proof. The ending of Yahuwah's calendar. And I read, quote unto you from that same site. Since the second century, and the second century start from 101 to 200 AD, okay? Since the second century AD, there have been a divergence of opinion about the date for celebrating the Paschal, and they put Easter, anniversary of the Lord's Passion, death, burial, and resurrection. The most ancient practice appears to have been to observe the 14th, the Passover date, 15th, and 16th days of the lunar month, regardless of the day of the Judean week. These dates might fall on from year to year. So we are going now into the proof why you see 30 days on that Roman stick calendar. Okay, remember the Roman stick calendar was probably dated around 81 AD. Because the gospel of Yahushua was going like wildfire. Because it's saying here that according to the Israelite practice, they've been observing Passover on the 14th. All right. And to represent the death, the burial, and the resurrection from the 14th, the 15th, and the 16th on the days of the moon. Okay. Despite of the day of the Judean week. Something very important to pay attention here. But let us continue to read. The Bishop of Rome desires of enhancing the observance of Sunday as a church festival, ruled that the annual celebration should always be held on the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday following the 14th day of the lunar month. So in other words, they change the Most High Holy Day to fall after the 14th day of the month. They changed it to fall on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in their pagan calendar. But let us continue to read. In Rome, Friday and Saturday of Easter were fast days, and on Sunday, the fast was broken by partaking of the communion. This controversy lasts almost 2 centuries until Constantine intervened in behalf of the Roman bishops and outlawed the other group. So since the gospel unto Constantine in 321, so from 32 AD unto 321 AD, this confusion or this debating was going back and forth. Okay? So Constantine interceded and established a law for everyone to follow. And this law, as we can see, was not based on the word of Yahuwah. Okay? Take this time now to pause your screen to look at the resources for this. But let us continue to read. And I read as quote, The Council of Nicaea accomplished three goals, all of which are still in effect today. The decree served to, number one, standardize the planetary week of 7 days, making Dies Solis the first day of the week, with Dies Saturni the last day of the week. So they made Sunday the first day of the week, with making Saturn the last day of the week, which we know as Saturday. Okay. Number two, the second decree guarantee that Passover and Easter will never fall on the same day. And we can see evidence of this still being continued in the Gregorian calendar. Okay? Passover and Easter never fall on the same day. And you will learn that Easter is paganistic. It has nothing to do with the word. Number three, the third decree. Exalt Dies Solis as the day of worship for both pagans and Christians. So what Constantine was leading, for what Constantine was doing, they was exalting the sun as the day of worship for the pagans and for the Messianic believers. Do you see how they was leading the masses who wanted to believe in the Messiah away from Yahuwah's word? Do you see the deception? Revelations 12 and 9. Let's continue. Because when you learn about the Roman Empire, it is established under Satan rule. Satan is their angel. Satan is their principality. Okay? But let us continue to read. I read this quote. By establishing Easter on the Sunday following the full moon after the vernal equinox, the Roman Catholic Church guaranteed that it would never fall on the Jewish Passover. So what they're saying is, during the spring equinox, the first moon that comes after the spring equinox, that's how they would establish Easter. And they would make sure that it would never fall on the Israelites' Passover day. In other words, it would never fall on Yahuwah's Passover day, which is Abib 14th. Very interesting. Now here's another passage I want to read you that came from the same site, from the article of History of a Lie, pertaining to the Council of Laodicea. Okay, and I read this quote. In order, therefore, to the accomplishment of her original purpose, it now became necessary for the church to secure legislation extinguishing all exemption and prohibiting the observance of the Sabbath, so as to quench that powerful protest against worship on Sunday. So that you have still those during that period of time that was protesting against the worship on Sunday. Okay. And now the truly divine command of Constantine and the Council of Nicaea that nothing should be held in common with the Jews was made the basis and the authority for legislation, utterly to crush out the observance of the Sabbath of Yahuwah, and to establish the observance of Sunday only in its stead. Do you see this, my people? So even in the Council of Laodicea, they was following the laws of Constantine and enforcing them. Because even during this period of time, you had the true believers, the Messianic Nazarene, rising up and saying, no, 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 that is not the most high holy day. That is not the most high Passover. Okay? The Israelites and the ones who converted into the new covenant. Okay? Take this time now to pause your screen to look at the resource where this come from. Again, this link will be in the video description box. Which brings us to another passage on that site. And this goes especially for these so-called these so-called apologetics. Let me say it correctly. This passage would go to these so-called apologetics Christians who come against us on keeping a memorial of the Most High holy days, and they want us to honor these heathen pagan days such as Christmas and Easter. This is for you because you need to read this, because this came from one of your own peoples back then. Read this. The Catholic scholar and apologist. As conservative Catholic scholar and apologist, Patrick Madrid stated, the calendar that we follow, including Seventh-day Adventists, is not only a calendar that was devised by the Catholic Church, but also it is a calendar that's based upon the solar year and not the lunar year. Do you see this? He's even speaking against the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And he's letting us know that they're not following the calendar of Yahuwah. They're following the solar year. Okay? Let us continue to read. And the Jewish calendar that was observed in the time of the Messiah follows a lunar calendar, which is 7 days short of the solar year. Now, those who study the heavens will know this, that the moon is about 11 days short from the solar year. Okay? And the Israelites calendar is totally different from the Gregorian calendar, from the Julian calendar, and from the ancient Roman calendars. Okay? Let us continue to read. So the great irony is that even the Seventh-day Adventists themselves are not worshiping on exactly the same Sabbath as the Jews of the time of the Messiah. So in other words, even the Seventh-day Adventists are not worshiping on the Sabbath day as the Hebrew Israelites of the time of Yahuwshua HaMashiyach. Take this time to pause the screen to get that source passage. If you have not watched part 1 and part 2, you would not understand what this Catholic apologetics is saying, because there's many great errors in the Gregorian calendar. It does not give you the correct Sabbath day. Okay? So according to the Roman laws, it became illegal to follow Yahuwah's calendar for the Passover. The Israelites were punished so severely that they forsaken Yahuwah's calendar method. In the Roman Empire, you follow the Julian calendar with the reformation of Sunday as the first day of the week and the Sabbath day, in which today we are still following it, but with an updated, reformed calendar known as the Gregorian calendar. And you know why this calendar is so wrong. You know why, my brothers and sisters, those who have watched part 1 and part 2. And remember, the curse of Yahuwah was upon the nation of Israel for his seventh day, which still is in effect today, for the majority still worship on the incorrect seventh day. Yes. So because of these articles that I was reading, it gave some interesting Latin words, some interesting Roman words that we're going to take a look at. Again, you have to study etymology, because when you study etymology and you look at the word Saturday and compare it to the word Sabbath, they do not match up. And I know when you go in the Gentile resources, you're going to say, well, it's listed there. Remember Revelation 12 and 9. They're giving you lies, and here's the proof. The Latin word for Sabbath is Sabbaton, and it's singular. Okay? And Sabbaton does equal to Sabbath. All right? And the Hebrew word for Sabbath is, you'll see as Shabbat, and it can be spelled with a TH at the end or with a T. Shabbat. Okay? And the Latin word that you can also see Sabbath being spelled as Sabbatah, which is plural. And in the Greek, you will see Sabbaton. And the Greek word Sabbaton can mean Sabbath or a week, when you look that up. Now, when you compare Sabbaton to the spellings of Saturday of that word, it does not match up. Okay? And again, Saturday is listed in the sources, but its spellings does not equal to the word Sabbath. Also, FYI, the Egyptian word Sabo, sas, Sabo does not equal to the word Sabbath. Okay? It does not. And you can find it in Apion 2.2 in the work of Josephus. Now let's bring us to this word, Saturn. Saturni is a Latin word that equals to Saturn. And in Latin, dies Saturni equals to Saturn's day or Saturday. Okay? And you can see that the spellings of Saturday does relate to the word Saturn. Now, the Latin word Domini equals to this definition of the Lord's day, and dia solis is a Latin word that equals to this word, the day of the sun or Sunday. The sources will be listed in the charts for you to click on for the proof. Again, 4angelpublication.com provide this proof. You can also look at Winky, Nary, and compare, and you will see the word Saturday listed there, but compare it to the other words. Also, the link for the work of Josephus will be listed, so you can look at the Egyptian word and watch the video on etymology that was given to you in this video. Also, you'll have access to the 7-day planetary week and how it was written in Latin and also in other words. So, take this time now to pause the screen to look at that. So remember, the Roman/Judean calendar format when reviewing ancient historical writings, for there was an adding of days for the market day, and the rotating of planets with each nondial letter on an 8-day nondial week cycle. And the 7-day week cycle planets are not affected, for they are fixed, my brothers and sisters. But the days of each month varies on the 7-day week. For the sun and moon year, total days are not evenly divisible by 7. And when comparing these heathen calendars and Roman historical dates to Yahuwah calendar, remember Saturn may fall on some of Yahuwah's 7th day. Very important for you to know that, my brothers and sisters. But not always, for it rotates. And the Roman added days to their calendars that was not aligned with the heavens. Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. So let me read that last line to you, because this is very important. Because as you can see, when comparing these heathen calendars and Roman historical dates to Yahuwah calendar, you will see Saturn may fall on some of Yahuwah's 7th day, but it is not always, for it rotates. And the Romans added days to their calendars that was not aligned with the heavens. Very important for you to know. So here, I also put together for you for a chart where you can see, okay, the multiples of 7 on the 7-day week cycle. Again, Saturn is listed as the first day, with Venus as the 7th day. And as you can see, when you do a continuous week cycle of 7, in each column, you should have multiple of 7s, such as when you add 7 to 1, you get 8. 8 to when you add 7 to 8, you get 15. 7 to 15, 22. 7 to 29. Well, as far as that, it'll stop there because a new month was beginning. So as you see here with the rest of the columns, all of these are in multiples of 7s. That means you're adding 7 to each number. But I also want to point out to you, notice how that when you have a new month, because you have a continuous week of a 7-day week, see how the numbers would be continuous. And this is very important to know, because when you look at the Gregorian calendar for October 1582, you will see the error, because they had omitted 10 days, which is very important. Therefore, your 7th day that you are keeping now, based on the Gregorian calendar, is incorrect. It is incorrect, okay? For as you can see, when you have a continuous week and you have another month coming in, it'll pick up behind the last day of the previous month, such as, let's say the last day of the previous month was 31. So the first day of the next month would start on day 4, okay, which is Mars. And that is, which is Mars. And as you can see, when you add 7 to 1, you get 8. Again, when you add 7 to 2, you get 9. And when you add 7 to 3, you get 10, and so forth. However, when you get to number 5, you can't add 7 to 29 because you're having a new month to start. Okay. And this is based on your week being continuous. All right. So the conclusion is the 7 days of the week order changed in 321 AD. Sunday became the first day and Saturday became the 7th day. The original first day for the Roman calendar was Saturn, also known as Saturday, which is confirmed by their history and artifacts. And all Yahuwah holy days and feast days were abolished and prohibited by the Romans. In other words, the Israelites and the Messianic believers could not keep Yahuwah days and feast days during the Roman Empire. And even now, you can see these so-called Christian preaching against us doing that too. So here's a question again for you to meditate on. According to the word in the King James 1611 Bible, is the sun or Saturn the planet or light in the heavens to tell us Yahuwah's 7th day, the Sabbath day? Think about that. With this video and in part 1 and 2, we learned that the Roman calendars, including the Gregorian calendar, have too many days or too fewer days and was not aligned with the seasons. In addition, those days taken away in October in October of the year of 1582 were not in multiples of sevens. Therefore, the day you are keeping the 7th day on, the Sabbath, is not the Sabbath of Yahuwah, because the heathen calendars have omitted days, have too many errors, and does not follow the King James 611 Holy Bible and the hidden in historical books. So again, my brothers and sisters, how do you know the 7th day you are keeping is Yahuwah's Sabbath day? Provide the evidence. Prove all things. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21. And watch part 1 and 2 to find out when is Yahuwah's 7th day, the Sabbath. So now this brings us to this question now. So why is there no buying and selling on Yahuwah's 7th day, the Sabbath? When we read Exodus chapter 20, verse 8, and Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 12, we learned that we are to keep the 7th day of Yahuwah holy and to sanctify it. So this is why I asked you the question, what does it mean to be holy and sanctified? Well, holy means to be set apart. And when you are set apart, you are identified as Yahuwah people, or as the as the worshipers of Yahuwah. And sanctify means to make holy or to make set apart. So in other words, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb among these heathens who are keeping these heathen pagan ways, such as Christmas, Easters, and such as them following these false faiths, these false religions. Okay. Now we follow a covenant because we are in a covenant with Yahuwah through Yahuswshua HaMashiyach. So in part 1 and part 2 video, it led us to finding that Saturn's day is a day of buying and is a day of buying and selling and sacrificing to Roman gods. This is why it was called the market day. So that was their holy day. That was their holiday. Okay, my brothers and sisters, Saturn's day, which confirmed what was said in those videos that that this Hebrew word H8163, satire, does relate to the word Saturn, and it is pertaining to the worshiping of devils. Okay. Now, the examples of some of the Roman gods that these heathen worship comes pertains to the heavens and its hosts. So let's go through some of the names. Saturn can also be known as through other names such as Crinus or Crino or Crinos. And it was derived from a word called Satu, and Satu means sowing. And that's very important to know because it's based on a spiritual message. Read 1 John chapter 3 for the answer. Now, when we look at etymology, Saturn also connects to the Etruscan god known as Satri. And also it connects to places named such as Satire, which is an ancient town of Latium, and to Satire Palace, which is a Mars also in Latium. And the source for that would be in the video description box under Wikipedia for the title of Saturn mythology. The next god that the Romans have is Jupiter, and Jupiter can also be known as Zeus or Dios, and Jupiter can be found in the book of Acts. Okay, Mercury can also be known as Mercuranus, and that can be found in the book of Acts. Venus, which is also known as Aphrodite, that can be found in the book of Isaiah. And Venus does pertain to Astaroth or Astar, which pertains to Easter. Okay. Sun can also be known as Apollo or Mithras, etc. And the moon, that's what I thought was very interesting, can be known as Diana. And Diana can be found also in the book of Acts. And Mars. Okay, so these are the gods of the Romans: Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Moon, Mars. Okay, and scriptures to see how the heathens was turned over to worship the heavens and its hosts can be found in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 19 to 20, Acts chapter 14, and chapter 19. So based on the planetary order, what was the first day in the 8-day week cycle and 7-day week cycle? And that is Saturn. And we already proven that by looking at the Roman stick calendar that was found in the baths of Titus that was built in 81 AD. Okay. Now, earlier we talked about Saturn having a sickle, which is very important to know. Also, which brings us to this. Notice how they have 30 days on this stick calendar, which is very important because this was during the time when the gospel of Yahuwshua HaMashiyach was going forth. Therefore, the converted Romans who enter into the new covenant and believe in the Messiah was honoring the holy feast days. So, which make more sense because we know the Julian calendar was based on the sun, and they would have a variant of days such as 29 to 31 days. So now we can see why we see 30 days on this stick calendar. Okay. Now, the picture that you see here that's in color of the stick calendar, I got that from Quariums.com. I want to let you know I don't agree everything on this site, but I'm just using it for a reference so you can see where this stick calendar photo came from. And it came from the book called About the History of the Calendar by A.E. Evenson, illustrated by William Neebe, Children Press, Chicago, page 11. So that's what I got that from, because when you go and do a Google search, you don't get too much resources of where this picture came from. And also angelpublication.com will also give you the resource of where this picture come from too as well. Okay, so we see here that the first man the first so-called God that is listed is Saturn, and he's represented by an old man with a sickle. Okay. Also, I want to mention this. This is another ancient let me see what they call it. Well, ancient artifact they found. So let me read this to you to prove to you that Saturn was the first day in that 7-day week. And I'm going to read this to you as quote. These portraits of the planetary gods of the astronomical week were found in a series of 7 medallions painted on a wall in Herculaneum, a Roman town destroyed with Pompeii by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. Okay. The medallions appear in one continuous line and in the following order: Saturn, Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus. And then it gives you the resource to see. And it says C, lay, pertur, anti D, eva, eve, eve, Carleno, Volume 3, page 257-263. And this picture is also on the Google document, so you have access. So this is again another evidence or proof about that 7-day week, beginning with Saturn, before Constantine made a change in 321 AD. Okay. Next question. What was the number associated with the non-diagonal letters? Okay. And that number was 9. So those who have understanding about 9 is that 9 is also associated as Satan's number. Look at Revelation chapter 16, verse 13, and see the mystery behind that. And I will list the video in the description box for you to watch to get more insight. Okay. Again, in the stick calendar, it's just confirming what we was reading about in the Encyclopedia Britannica. And let me see what else here. And this source here that you see, I cannot say it, will also be listed either in the video description box or in the Google Doc, so you can see proof that the 7-day week, first day is Saturn. Okay. Now we get into the juicy part to explain why we see Saturn with a sickle. The proof. The market day sacred to Saturn, the god of agriculture. Okay. Now this comes from a site from, let me see, where was the site? PenelopeuChicago.edu. Okay. And on the website, it has title Lecus Curtius Roman Calendar Nundinate Smith's Dictionary 1875. So I'll read this quote to you. Both before and after the time of Caesar, it was sometimes thought necessary for religious reasons to transfer the nun day from the day on which they should have fallen to another one. And as you can see, they was using, again, Dios Cassius' book to confirm that. Okay, so in other words, they would change their market day due to religious reasons and also due to superstitions. Okay, remember January the 1st. Let us continue to read. The Nundinate themselves were according to Plutarch, and forgive me if I mispronounce it. So it's according to him, sacred to Saturn, and according to Granuus, I'm not going to try to say that word, but according to Granuus, the Flaminica offered at all Nundinate a sacrifice of a ram to Jupiter. So you can see that Saturn was their holy day. It was their holiday. It was their market day. Okay. And it was a day that they would make sacrifice unto Jupiter. Okay, as well. Now let's go to the next source, which is number 2. Saturn, the Roman god of agriculture, harvesting and increasing monies by Plutarch. That's an ancient historian. Well, no, that's an ancient keeper. That's an ancient historian keeper, okay, that we just read about from the first quote. Now let us read. This also comes from the same site, and this link will be listed in the video description box, okay? Now, abundant harvests and their disposal are what give rise to a monetary system. Therefore, they make the God who is the cause of their good fortune its guardian also. Testimony to support this may be found in the fact that markets held every 8 days and called nun day are considered sacred to Saturn, for it was the superabundance of the harvest that initiate buying and selling. And the reference numbers to Nundinate says that is the 9th day by the Roman inclusive system of reckoning. So the Nundinate is the market day, and on that day they have buying and selling, and that day was sacred to their god Saturn, which also we know that represents Satan. Now we get into the understanding about why Yahuwah don't want us to buy and sell. Okay, let us continue to read. Or is this a matter of ancient history where Valeris Publicola, the first to make the temple of Saturn the treasury, when the kings have been overthrown, because he believed that the place was well protected, in plain sight, and hard to attack secretly? Now we can see how Saturn, who is represented by an old man with a sickle, how money is associated to him, the so-called God. But let us go to number 3. When you go to number 3 on the Britannica's website, you will also learn there too that Saturn is a Roman god of agriculture and is represented by an old man with a sickle. Okay, so that link will be provided for you to read more about. So why does Yahuwah command us not to buy or sell on his holy days, even the Sabbath day? Okay, so the reason is the seventh day, the Sabbath, is holy to Yahuwah. So we just talked about what holy means, what? Set apart. And on this holy day, we are to commit no evil on his holy days, including the seventh day, the Sabbath. And scriptures to confirm what I'm saying to you can be found in the following. Isaiah chapter 56, verse 2. Blessed is the man that do this, and the son of man that layeth hold on it, that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it, and keepeth his hand from doing any evil. So on this holy day, we're not to do any evil. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 18. And thou shalt do that which is right and good in the sight of Yahuwah, that it may be well with thee, and that thou mayest go in and possess the good land which Yahuwah sware unto thy fathers. So on his holy days, including the seventh day, the Sabbath, we are to do what is right and good in the sight of Yahuwah. And how do we know what is right and good? The law, the covenant, my brothers and sisters. But let us continue to read. Numbers chapter 10, verse 31. And if the people of the land bring ware or any victuals on the Sabbath day to sell, that we will not buy it of them on the Sabbath or on the holy day, and that we would leave the seventh year and the exaction of every debt. Now here, take this time now to approach the screen for the precepts, but as you can learn that in Hebrew, for every debt means every hand. Even here in the book of Nehemiah, we have proof that our people did not buy and sell on the Sabbath day. It was a holy day. Now we get into the mysteries or into the reasons on why Yahuwah command us not to do this. Okay, not to buy and sell. Now, when we look at the word where in this verse, and you go to the Hebrew number H4728, you will learn where means merchandise. Okay, so the people of the land would bring merchandise or vinceral. And when you look up vinceral in the Hebrew, which is 87668, you will learn it means corn, and corn is actually wheat or barley, my people. It's and the Old Testament would prove that it is not the corn, the cob that we see today. It is actually the wheat or barley, because wheat or barley makes bread. All right. Let us continue. Now they will bring merchandise and corn, which is wheat and barley, to sell. Okay. But on the Sabbath day, my people will not buy or sell, because it was a holy day unto Yahuwah, a set apart day. Now, you probably think it is buying and selling a form of work. Think about it. Look at this verse. Yes, because you have to do some type of form of work in order to buy and sell. Okay? The key word, look at this in this word, it said they had to bring. So on that day, we're not even to even have any burdens. We're not even to carry anything. Okay? Also, it brings us to this question now. How many days how many days in a moon year? 354 or 355, right? Okay. So so in the moon year, Let me read this correctly. So in the moon year, is 354 or 355 days still a year? Yes, my brothers and sisters. And in the same and the same with the sun, is 365 or 366 days still a year? Yes. And this is very important for you to know, because when you study Yahuwah's calendar, you're going to learn about inclusive counting for his calendar, and you will understand why I mentioned these two questions to you. So you want to take this time now to write that down to understand Yahuwah's calendar. Okay? So a year unto Yahuwah is still, for the moon, 354, 355. And for the sun, it could still be 365 or 366. Okay? Yahuwah defines what is a year, what is a day, what is a month. Something for you to know. Okay? Now, the scriptures that will give you more understanding about how to keep the Sabbath day holy, read Matthew chapter 12, Mark chapter 3, Luke chapter 6, and Isaiah chapter 58, verse 13 to 14. Because as you can see, Yahuwah do not want us to commit any evil on his day, and buying and selling, and nor does he want us to buy and sell on this day. Which brings us to this question. So why does Yahuwah command us not to buy or sell? Is buying and selling evil? Now the answer can be found in these following scriptures. So let us read. Ben Sirach, which is the book of Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha, chapter 27, verse 1 to 6. Many have sinned for a small matter, and he that seeketh for abundance will turn his eyes away. Meditate on that one, but let us continue. As a nail sticketh fast between the joinings of the stone, so do sin stick close between buying and selling. Now you want to highlight that, because now we get into the reason why the Father now wants to buy and sell, because sin stick close between buying and selling. Let us continue. Unless a man hold himself diligently in the fear of Yahuwah, his house shall soon be overthrown. As when one shifteth with a sheaf, the refuseth remain, so the fifth a man in his talk. So when you shift with a sheaf, you know how you do with your flour with a what they call a collier, and what remains is the unwanted parts. So that is compared to as the fifth of a man in his talk. Okay, let us continue. The furnace proveth the potter's vessel. So the trial of man is in his reasoning. So the same way a pot of vessel is put in the furnace to be tried, we are going to be what? Tried and purified by fire. Read Zechariah chapter 13 and look at the precepts that's listed in the King James 1611 Bible for that verse. And you will see that we will also be tried by fire, just as a potter's vessel is put in the fire. Verse 6, the fruit declareth, if the tree have been dressed, so is the utterance of a conceit in the heart of man. So as a tree bear fruit, as a tree bear its fruits, so does a man's heart can be revealed by his fruits. Okay. The next set of scriptures that would give us the answer to the question above is Proverbs chapter 23, verse 1 to 4. When thou sittest to eat with a ruler, consider diligently what is before thee. Okay? Verse 2. And put a knife to thy throat, if thou be a man given to appetite. So what this verse is saying to you, that you don't want your stomach to take control over you. In other words, stomach versus your mind. Because you know how when a man is hungry, what? They would eat anything without thinking, because right now their stomach is taking over. All right. So when you are eating with according to this verse, when you are eating with a ruler, it said, consider diligently what is before thee. That means think. All right. Now, those who understand the King James 611 and read that whole volume of book will understand what this verse is talking about. But let us continue. Verse 3, be not desirous of his dainties, for they are deceitful. Meat. And remember, meat also represent bread. Okay. So what it's saying here is that you don't know what a person's motives is, or why they're giving you such a great feast to feast upon. Think. This is why you don't want to meet someone with an empty stomach or be in hunger, because you can be thinking with your stomach and not with your mind, and not see the trap that Satan has set before you. Verse 4, labor not to be rich, cease from thy own wisdom. And the precept of that verse is 1 Timothy 6 and 9 and 10. This is very important. I wish I had came across this verse a long time ago, my brothers and sisters. It said, labor not to be rich, cease from thy own wisdom. Meditate on that, but let us continue, okay? 1 Timothy chapter 6. Now we're going to go to that chapter because I want to read to you verse 1 through 10 because there's some deep things in that chapter. But we're going to come back and talk about verse 7 through 10, okay? So let us go to Timothy. 1 Timothy chapter 6. This is the King James 1611 Bible. And when you have some time, read the Bible summary, okay? But we're just going to read these verses 1 through 10. Let us, as many servants as are under the yoke, count their own masters worthy of all honor, that the name of Yahuwah and his doctrine be not blasphemed. So we are under the yoke of the Messiah. We are bearing his new covenant, okay? So those who are servants, even now we are still servants in this kingdom because we all have jobs, okay? It said here, count their masters worthy of all honor. We are to show respect to other people, okay? People who are above us, all right? Because we are representing Yahuwah. And we don't want to make his word look as being a lie. So we are representing Yahuwah and his word. Verse 2. And they that have believing masters, let them not despise them, because they are brethren. So you know that your boss over you, your master over you, they believe, we should not hate them, despise them, because now they have become our brethren. But rather do them service, because they are faithful and beloved, partakers of the benefit. These things teach and exhort. Verse 3. If any man teach otherwise, and consent not to the wholesome words, even the words of our Master Yahuwshua HaMashiyach, and to the doctrine which is according to godliness. Okay? So what this verse is saying here, do not consent to it if any man teach otherwise, if they don't teach according to the words of Yahuwshua HaMashiyach, and according to the doctrine that is written in the 1611 Bible. Okay? Verse 4. He is proud, knowing nothing, but doting about questions and strifes of words, whereof cometh envy, strife, railings, evil surmising, perverse disputings of men of corrupt minds, and destitute of the truth, supposing that gain is godliness. From such withdraw thyself. So it's telling you to separate yourself from these who are preaching against the gospel, who are teaching another doctrine. Separate yourself, because according to the word of the Most High, we are to we are to show godliness. That means we are to show holiness. And those who are teaching another doctrine are not doing that, for they are bearing these fruits. They are proud. They don't know anything. They are doubting about questions and strifles of words. They are coming with envy, strife, ravelings, evil surmising. They are perverse, disputing of men of corrupt minds. They are destitute of the truth. That means they pervert the truth. And they think they are gaining godliness, but they are not. So the word tells us to separate ourselves from them. Okay? Verse 6. But godliness with contentment is a great gain. Now you want to highlight that, because again, it goes back to the verse we read in Ben Sarah about not laboring for wealth and riches. We ought to be content with whatever Yahuwah give us in this world. Verse 7. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. This is very important to know. So when we die, we don't bring anything to this world when we are born. Therefore, when we die, we're going to not carry any of these things, any of these worldly things with us. Verse 8. And having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. So again, we are to be content with whatever Yahuwah give unto us, and not seek out riches the worldly things of this world. Verse 9. But they that which be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. So now we can understand why we should not seek the riches of this world, my people, because it's going to lead us into temptations. Okay, it's going to lead us into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which will lead us to destruction and perdition. Verse 10. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some covet after, they have erred from the faith and purged themselves through with many sorrows. So as you can see, now we get a true understanding why the Father do not want us to buy and sell. For as the book of Ben Sirach confirmed unto us, that sin stick close between buying and selling. And as we can see in verse 10, the money is the root of evil behind all of this. Okay? So take this time now to pause your screen and also look at verse 6 as well and meditate on these verses. Okay? Which now brings us to this. The doorway to your heart and soul. Buying and selling bring forth evil fruits, my brothers and sisters. It is like a doorway to your heart. Remember, your heart will show your fruits through your conversation, the way you live, the way you walk. So buying and selling bring forth evil fruits. And scriptures to show this, read Galatians chapter 5, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, and Revelation chapter 22. For the unrighteous fruits are greed, hatred, pride, covetous, idolatry, witchcraft, fornication, /humongering, adultery, murderings, lyings, drunkenness, etc. So these are the fruits that can come from buying and selling. And you're probably saying, huh? Yes, my people. You see, people love to buy and sell to satisfy their wicked spirits and their lusts. For some, it is to make money, to be rich / wealthy. For others, it's to have power, or to be recognized, or to satisfy their wants or fleshy desires, etc. So now you can see how money is the root of all of them, which corrupts your heart. It corrupts your soul. So I want to take this time to give you a brief testimony of mine, because I went through this, my brothers and sisters. See, I had a spiritual experience with Yahuwah. But as life go on, I was distracted. He sent messengers to me telling me to stop running from him, because I was the type, if I didn't do right, you didn't see me in church. So as time went on, he sent another messenger, and this messenger let me know that I will fall greatly. But after I fall, I will be a great servant for Yahuwah. You see, my brothers and sisters, I lost all of my worldly possessions. Yes. And I thank the Most High that he did that, because you know what? It set me free. It set me free, and I love my life now. I'm no longer in bondage with the cares of this world. And now I have a true understanding of Yahuwah, and I have a relationship with him now. And I understand his covenant. And I'm so thankful. Yahuwah, I give you all the praises. And I thank you for sending your son, Yahuwshua HaMashiyach. And I thank you for saving us. And I thank you for chastising us to get us out of darkness and to get us out of bondage. And I thank you. So that is my brief testimony unto you. Okay? Now, examples of what buying and selling produce or can be found in these scriptures. Genesis chapter 25, for you see that Esau sold his birthright, and because he sold his birthright, it brought forth the hatred of Jacob and in his descendants. See, Esau and his descendants, hate their brother, Jacob, and his descendants. That's the evil fruit that was produced from selling his birthright. Then we look at Genesis chapter 37. Joseph was sold to the Ishmaelites by his brothers. And because they sold Joseph, they end up lying to their father Jacob and transgression against Yahuwah. Do you see what buying and selling would do? But let us continue. Selling and buying in the temple of Yahuwah, which is the house of Yahuwah or tabernacle of Yahuwah. And my brothers and sisters, that was a no. For Yahuwah's house, his temple, is not a house of merchandise. You see, my brothers and sisters, Yahuwah's temple is a house of prayer. And there's a deep carnal and spiritual meaning behind this. For when you read the scriptures in Matthew chapter 21, in Mark chapter 11, and John chapter 2, you will learn that you are set free and no longer servants, as confirmed in Galatians chapter 4. Because see, what is the most valuable thing that you have, my brothers and sisters? Your soul, which is your heart. It's that one that you hear that's inside your head, that voice. Because see, as in Matthew chapter 16, verse 26, it says that, for what is a man profiteth if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? So what shall you buy in exchange of your soul? What shall you gain in exchange of your soul? Because many do not understand this new covenant. Many are selling out to Satan and to his children and not understanding the inheritance that Yahuwah has for you. So are you willing to sell your soul out for the riches of this world? Think about it. Verse 27 of Matthew chapter 16. And if this is not the correct chapter, I'm going to list it in the video description box or in the comment section. Verse 27. For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his works. Precepts are Psalm chapter 62, verse 12, and Romans chapter 2, verse 6. So again, do you want to sell your soul for the riches of this world? Because according to verse 27, those who don't sell out, those who don't sell their soul to Satan and to his children shall be rewarded greatly, because they have been faithful and true to Yahuwah and to Yahuwshua HaMashiyach, who is the Messiah. Other scriptures to read about this is in Mark chapter 8, verse 36. So looking back at this Roman stick calendar, you will see that Saturn is the god of agriculture and time, known as the father of time, for the ancient Romans. And he is represented by an old man with a sickle, which increased wealth due to buying and selling. And we have just learned that buying and selling leads to sin and transgressions. And it also leads to the eternal death, which is the eternal lake of fire that is written in Revelation chapter 12. So now we'll begin to see why Yahuwah do not want us to buy and sell on his holy day, because we are not to commit any evil on his holy days, including the seventh day, the Sabbath. Another interesting fact that I found about Saturn was that Romulus, who was the first king of the Roman Empire and who established the Roman Empire, was an Edomite. And you know that the Roman kingdom is the fourth beast, and it's represented as the red kingdom that is written in the book of Revelations. And his kingdom, Esau's kingdom, is under Satan. That is their principality. That is their angel they are serving. And what was interesting, that the temple of Saturn is in the Roman Forum, housed the state treasure throughout the Roman history. Remember, we're reading about the money and the treasury and their belief, how they think that their treasure will be protected because it's in the temple of Saturn, and the temple of Saturn represents Satan, who is the Roman who is the Roman god of agriculture and of wealth and and of I mean, who is the Roman god of agriculture, who also brings increase in wealth, and he is also their father of time. Okay, something to really think about. So the temple of Saturn is in the Roman Forum, housed the state treasure throughout the Roman history. And this temple is located at the base of Capitoline Hill. Now, Capitoline Hill is between the Forum and the Campus Martius. And Capitol Hill is one of the 7 hills of Rome. Very interesting to know this, okay? So now we can get understanding where this Roman festival Saturnalia comes from. It comes from them serving the god Saturn. For Saturnalia is a Roman feast. It is a time of feasting, and there during this time they have role reversal, free speech, gift giving, reveling in December. Now, what does sound like familiar to you? Christmas. Let us continue. And Saturn, the planet, and Saturday are both named after this god. Okay? The sources will be listed. The title are Saturn Mythology and Capitol Hill. And I want to emphasize this again. I read quote to you. Saturn the planet and Saturday were both named after the god. This is where you get the name Saturday from. Saturn. Not from the word Sabbath or from the Hebrew word Shabbat. It don't come from the Hebrew word Shabbat or Sabbath. Saturday comes from the word Saturn. Okay? So now, my brothers and sisters, we now have the reasons on why Yahuwah do not want us to buy and sell on the 7th day, the Sabbath day. For buying and selling on the holy day of Yahuwah shall cause you to sin and to commit great evil in the sight of Yahuwah. So I leave you with these questions, my brothers and sisters. According to the word in the King James 1611, is the sun or Saturn the planet or light in the heavens to tell us Yahuwah's 7th day, the Sabbath? Does these 2 planets, my brothers and sisters, tell us or give us Yahuwah's Sabbath day, which is the 7th day? Something to really think about. Which lead to this last question. How do you know the 7th day you are keeping is Yahuwah's Sabbath day? Provide the evidence. Prove all things. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21. And watch part 1 and part 2 to find out when is Yahuwah's 7th day, the Sabbath. So my brothers and sisters, this end the word. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd enjoyed it well, for I learned a great deal of why Yahuwah wants us to keep his Sabbath day holy and why we should not buy and sell. I also learned that the Gregorian and the Julian and the ancient Roman calendar would not give us the 7th day. And I give all praises to Yahuwah for revealing that truth to us. For we now see how Revelation 12 and 9 is being fulfilled, and how Daniel chapter 7, verse 23 to 25 is being fulfilled. Now, my brothers and sisters, remember this family, Brother Eliasha and his wife, for they are truly going through and bearing their spiritual cross. For they was falsely accused, and their children was taken away. Please keep their story alive and pray for this family. So I close out with this prayer. In the name of Yahuwshua HaMashiyach, I plead the blood upon this video and the links attached. I pray, Yahuwah, that your people receive the understanding about your calendar and to know that the 7th day, the Sabbath day, will not be given in the heathen's calendar. I pray that they seek you for this understanding. I also pray that they receive the understanding on why we should not buy and sell on your holy days, including the 7th day, which is the Sabbath day. I pray that they receive this understanding. I also pray that whatever our enemies plan against us, that they will fall into their own pits and that their own plans will work against them. And I also pray that they will repent and turn from their wicked ways. I also pray for Brother Eliasha and his wife, for they are truly going through. Comfort them and strengthen them, and to protect them from all danger, harm, and evil. But use that family to glorify your name, and let your truth be brought forth in the jails that they are in. And if anything I have not prayed for in this prayer, Father, I ask that you fulfill it according to your will. In the name of Yahuwshua HaMashiyach, so be it. So my brothers and sisters, I know this word was deep and long, but it had to be done. For you know how the children of Satan are. And you know how the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Herodians of today are. So it had to be done. Continue to preach the gospel that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, for this is the season for Yahuwshua HaMashiyach, the Messiah, to return. Make sure the people receive salvation as written in Romans chapter 10, as written in Romans chapter 10. And make sure they are baptized in the name of Yahuwshua HaMashiyach. For the water baptism was never stopped, as confirmed in the whole book of Acts and Mark chapter 16. I love you all, and Shalom.